conditions will resume. We'll try to push drugs to keep us all dumbed down and hope that they will never see the truth around. Another promise, another scene, another package lie to keep us trapped in greed. Another green bells wrapped around our minds, an endless red tape to keep the truth confined. They will not force us. They will stop degrading us. They will not control us. We will be victorious.
Hello. Thank you for tuning in. One moment. I am just trying to get my rock fin. There we go. It's a little bit delayed. There we are. All right. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, you guys. If you are new, I am 85% blind, so I will not be able to see your comments. However, I read them after we get off the air with my handy dandy machine thingy. So tonight, I'm super excited to have this gentleman. I'll call him a gentleman. I don't know him that well. We met on February 3rd in East Palestine on the 1 year anniversary. He gave a speech and showed his film, the documentary he made on Scott C. Smith, which we're going to be seeing tonight as well. Mr. Hank, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm just ecstatic to be here, actually.
Well, I was immediately taken by you, and you were talking to someone, and I was standing there, and I was like, "Are you going to the next thing? I want to talk to you." Because I was like, "I got to talk to this guy." Like, I love your documentary so much, and of course, I love Scott as well, who's the focus of the documentary. But also, for someone who was like, I just brought my phone and made a documentary on it, and the fact that you were doing last minute touch ups the night before you premiered it, I was blown away. So, what inspired you to make this film?
Well, the short answer is a lady named Marilyn Leisner, who you know, and she's in the film. About 5 years ago, I started working on a film. It's a feature documentary that'll be out this year about the side effects of Agent Orange, which is a defoliant that was sprayed in the Vietnam War to kill jungle, and the effect that it's having now on the children and grandchildren and great grandchildren of Vietnam veterans. So I met Marilyn through that process of trying to get the whole story of that, because it's just huge. I mean, I've been working on it over 5 years now, and there's still things that I learn new every day. But she called me and she said, "Hank, there's this guy named Scott Smith that wants to fly me out to East Palestine, Ohio, where this train derailment's happened." And she goes, "But he keeps getting messed with by police and by local officials, and he keeps being harassed and threatened." And she goes, "I'm scared to go by myself." She said, "Will you go with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll go. Why not? Sounds great." So I kind of laugh at that. I said, "I don't know if I've got enough sense to not go do something when something like that happens." So I have my own reasons for wanting to continuously put myself out there, and it's when she asked me, of course I can't tell Marilyn no about anything. Anytime she's asked me, I mean, she's an absolute hero to this country, as well as Scott. So I went with no inclination, no real plan of making anything, but
you were more a security guard when you came out.
Yeah, it was more like a security
bouncer.
Right. And so, but I was like, yeah, you know what, I'll go. But then I'm always documenting things, and I'm always thinking about stuff. Like we've got some shows that are in the works that are unscripted, which is a fancy way to say reality. And I'm always looking at projects that gain my interest or something that I'm really passionate about. Not necessarily the money, but something that really sticks out to me. And the thing that I really noticed about the people in East Palestine, and you've noticed at the end of the film, I say Hank Bagwell and citizens or residents, one of the two, of East Palestine, Ohio film. And what they did and what they're still continuing to do is so amazing. We live in a time to where we can make movies on our phones. We
Yeah.
really do. Now, I mean, like, I don't know if you can see, I got a whole little thing set up back here where I do interviews when I bring people into the studio. But I mean, I've got $30,000 cameras sitting behind me, but I've also got a really good piece of equipment that I'm actually using an iPhone on this thing right here. And so when people ask me and be like, oh, well, I can't make a movie, how do you make a movie? How do you get funding? Man, use your phone, make a film, just make a film. And what the people of East Palestine are doing is they're using this technology to make a difference. They're using it to hold people accountable. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, I can do that too. I can do that with my phone and just document. And so Leslie Pacey, who is amazing, she's with the Government Accountability Project, had never made a film in her life, right? And I said, give me your phone. She gives me her phone, and I put the settings the way I wanted it, and I turned it around, and I said, here, hold it like this. And I said it where, a cinematic mode, which came back to bite me in the butt on the editing, but it's fine. So you'll see these cuts of things, and you'll hear her talking sometimes, and that's literally just because I said, here, she's never made a film before, here. And her footage is in this thing as well. So I've never made a film on a phone before, but that really just kind of stuck out to me, to where I want people to really see that, is that you don't have to have all this fancy gear to make a difference, So.
Yeah, like when I recorded EPA douche canoe Mark, when he didn't know I was recording him, so my phone was literally filming my crotch the entire hour and a half. So I was like, Matt, we got to find a way to put a picture on this so I can release just the audio and not show the actual video.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, that phone, my phone exposed so much crap. So you're right. Like, and people in EP are constantly showing that they can be their own media, and they can, there's so many people who have caught things on tape, so many residents, and it's incredible.
And they shared them with me too. That was one thing that I loved, is that they were so willing, just because I'm not making money off that film. Would it be great if it got picked up and ran around a bunch of places? Absolutely. But it's not why I made it. I made it because I'm glad you said douche canoe. So now I feel like I can let loose a little bit.
Oh yeah.
I hate that here we are still all these years later since the Vietnam War, and when we use these defoliants, right? This use of chemicals. And while they're different chemicals, it's the same attitude. It's the same. I heard somebody say, yeah, if this would have derailed in Columbus, there's no way they would lit that on fire. And if you don't believe that, you have lost your damn mind. That's 100% correct. The EPA is holding hands. I say that in the film. They're holding hands with the railroad. And so if I can use my gift, whatever it is, of storytelling to help people who can't speak for themselves, I'm here for that. And that's exactly what's going on. It's the same way that they did the Vietnam veterans. It's the same way they did the burn pit guys. It's the same way that they're doing the East Palestine. Times Beach guys. And so people might argue and say, well, Times Beach got bought out. That's true. But you know what they've not done since? According to the citizens that I talked to, they've not even came back to check on them in years and years and years. And I talked to a guy when I was at one of the events, one of the little gatherings, and the guy said, or a lady, she said, well, you don't want to know what I think. And I was like, I absolutely want to know what you think. I mean, I want to hear everybody's side, everybody's story, because I try not to be just so direct that this is, I want you to decide for yourself, right? which was a little different in this film, and I didn't really care because I was like, fuckery is afoot, and we need to really just hammer down and say, and hold these people accountable. Now, I think it's wonderful that you've got people like Douche Canoe who's being caught over and over and over and over and over, but yet they, Time magazine writes a hit piece on about Scott, and it's ridiculous. So at least these guys have ammo because they've got video on their side, and there's one thing that a camera doesn't lie. So
absolutely. And you're totally right, because I have other documentarian friends who say the same thing. I don't want it to look skewed. I want to be fair. I want to be balanced. But like when it comes to EP, I'm not like, I've been covering it since the day it happened. I don't know what you possibly could show that would make someone not side with the residents. Like this it's so freaking cut and dry.
It really is, and it's a situation where I think what I wanted to make with that is just that I wanted people just to really know what was going on. And there are other documentary filmmakers that I don't much care for because they do this whole gotcha thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I kept waiting for, like when I was doing the Vietnam film, I kept waiting for a smoking gun. I kept waiting to have these, these documents or this video that would just be, go, we got them. There's this giant, piss off attitude from our politicians, from the chemical companies, from all these people that they just don't care. So I would love for them to come on and like let me interview them, but they're just not going to. That's not going to happen, and they know why, because it's about damage control for them, and it's about minimizing their liability that's going on there. And the more I find out about what's happening in East Palestine, the more. And I try not to be a Debbie Downer, but when people from there ask me what to do, I might move, get out. Just I mean, I don't know what else to say. Just it's I feel for them, and if there's anything that I can do for them, I want to do those things for them. So if me using this medium to help them does well, then I hope I want it to.
Absolutely. And I do want to give a shout out to those who have donated. This is the third time I've done a fundraiser for EP. And this time it's still going. You guys, Matt, if you could put the link in the chat. And one of the things that's so infuriating to me is that like it's like the number one thing I get requests for is water. Of course, after over a year, they're still drinking bottled water, and some even still bathing in it. But also things like baby diapers, paper towels, toilet paper, like that's what they're asking for. These are bare minimum things, and they don't even have that. Right. So it is so disgusting that the local, federal, state government, they cannot even provide them with the absolute bare minimum. And a disaster declaration has been sitting on Biden's desk since July. All you have to do is sign it.
I have to say, it is comical how proud of themselves they are for what they're doing, or for doing absolutely nothing. Yep. How proud of themselves they are. When I was when I went into the East Palestine, the first time we drove through there, of course, Marilyn's in there just reading them the riot act. I mean, somebody's got that footage somewhere. She's just telling them, you're just a badass. She is a badass, and she's and so is Leslie. They're both just incredible. Yeah. But Leslie makes fun of me. She goes, "You've got this whole like Southern swagger. You walk in with your cowboy hat on and your Southern accent, and the next thing you know, it's too late for them, and you got them like you got them." And I gotta go. So I'm asking them, and I go in there and I just said, I'm who lit it on fire? Like who thought bunch of chemicals here? Let's light this shit on fire. Like who thought that was the thing to do, right? And they kept bragging about how they had EPA agents on the ground like within hours, right? And I'm like, okay,
Right.
well that's cool, good. But who says, hey? And then they go, oh, we don't know. And I said, you don't know? You, the EPA,
Right.
you don't know who lit that on fire? Like, shouldn't that be something that you should be giving permission for them to do? And they just kept getting quiet, and they're just sitting there, and I'm just asking, and I grin, and she goes, see, you're grinning, it's like you know something, or you're trying to bait me. I go, I'm not trying to bait you, I'm asking you a question. And finally, she said, the fire chief, and I went, really? And we talk about that more in the film too. But the part that wasn't in the film that I left out was the guy. So I go into the fire chief's place, and he says, he goes, well, now let me tell you, because I said, you sure got those trains up and running really quickly, which I'm talking to a friend of mine who works in plastics and molding, and she said that 2 days that it was down caused this incredible backlog of factories that couldn't get their stuff. And she goes, just that derailment right there put everything back, and it cost people stupid amounts of money, right? That they couldn't get that stuff. So, but anyway, he said, well, if this road out here was, had a spill on it, they would eventually reopen that road. And I said, yeah, I agree with that. I said, but here's my issue with it. They're not making money on this road out in front of my house. If there's a derailment there, or if there's a tanker truck runs off, they're going to close down this road. And I said, it's going to be an inconvenience for a lot of people, but they're not making money off this. I said, for every day that railroad is shut down, Norfolk Southern is not making money. And he went, yeah, I guess you're right. And I was like, so, there's a lot of stuff going on yet too. I think we may be looking at making a feature on this thing, because there's still just so much stuff that you can't make this up. If I wrote this as a script and took it to a studio and said, here's this story, they would go, it's not believable. That would never happen.
Right.
It's just too far fetched. And yet here we are.
And unfortunately, this is something I fear, just, having intimate relationships with so many of the residents. I think one of the things I fear is, I see them getting sicker and sicker. And this is something that, I know a lot of people at the event February 3rd were comparing this to 9/11 in the respect that, health effects were showing up more and more throughout the years. And I think we're going to see that as well. So it's almost like we could do a documentary
100%.
like every freaking year.
Yeah.
Or even every 6 months.
But here we are, 60 something years later, and we're still the children of Vietnam veterans who were poisoned by their government, by the way, and the chemical companies are not getting any help. Like they're called, they called Vietnam veterans liars and freeloaders. They called them everything under the sun, and so there's going to be, of course there's going to be these lingering issues with that kind of stuff. The guy that was in East Palestine, he said to me, not in East Palestine, in Times Beach, they're so similar, I call them the same thing. In Times Beach, he looked at me and he just goes, I wish we'd never left. There was nothing wrong with this place, I had friends die, I had a friend, he died of cancer, and then I had another friend, well, he died of cancer, and had another friend, he died of cancer, and another one, and you could just see the look on his face, and he was just, this whole thing, he hasn't thought about that in 40 years. Now all of a sudden, and I looked at him, I go, you want to do an interview with me? He goes, I would love to. And all of a sudden, just in that instant, he was like, now that I think about it, he goes, no one has ever come around and asked, hey, how are you guys? Because they were spraying TCDD on those roads. They were dumping it, and it's incredible. It's the story of that story and this one, they just line up, and Vietnam led me to Times Beach, and Times Beach led me to East Palestine.
Yeah, wow. It's so incredible. Oh my gosh. Well, why don't let's play the film for people who are here. I'm excited to watch it again. It was so good. And spoiler alert, Mark Ruffalo's in it. you guys know how I feel about him. Um, but yeah, we're gonna play the film, you guys, so you guys can see it. It's awesome. So if you want to know why an independent scientist, keeps going to EP on his own dime, I think it's been over 24 times now, right?
Oh yeah.
And he keeps going because the EPA is not a protection agency. They're not doing shit except lying. So Scott keeps going to take it upon himself, which in turn has gotten him just bullied by the media, subpoenaed by Norfolk, and just an array of just clusterfuck. So
I
shout
call
out.
the EPA. I call the EPA East Palestine arsonists.
Oh my God, so good. I'm totally using that. I'm stealing that. Matt, can you press play and mute us both, pretty please? Thank you.
The initial fire on someone's property, I tested.
15 minutes away from us.
Just came
in
in.
New Springfield. Yeah.
Wow. Look at the
There's
flume
a
smoke.
This lady here, that's Marilyn Leisner, the last mayor of Times Beach, Missouri, a small resort town along the Merrimack River just outside of St. Louis that the government bought out after some jackass contracted with the chemical companies to dispose of their waste. He mixed that chemical waste with oil and sprayed the roads of Times Beach with its mixture. Scott Smith, the guy in the blue shirt, has been to over 60 chemical contamination disasters, and he's brought Marilyn here to talk with some of the people of East Palestine, Ohio, the site of one of the nastiest, most toxic chemical spills in history. One of its citizen whistleblowers gave me a 1,400-page EPA memo with a list of chemicals that were on board the train when it derailed, that the EPA is now removed from their website. According to their own documents, the EPA knew about multiple sites of chemical contamination for almost 10 years prior to warning the residents of Times Beach. If there's anyone who knows the EPA playbook, it's the guy in the blue shirt.
At Times Beach, the federal and state officials told us when the test results came back that they were under 100 parts per billion. We got their test results, and their test results were 1,200 parts per billion. We gave those test results to an AP reporter, and they published them. We asked them why they lied to us. They said they wanted to prevent people from being damaged economically, physically, psychologically, and socially, and they didn't want riots.
But they already did that to us.
Yeah.
That's what they've done.
They used our lab after telling us there was no lab that could do it. We had already collected some money to test ourselves, and so they used that lab. Our test results came back on December the 13th, saying the dioxin was there, but we didn't have the money to say what the level was. Their test results came back on December 23rd. On December 23rd, they revealed those results at a Christmas party the residents that were in town had at our community center. And they again said, if you're in town, leave. Don't take nothing with you. If you're out of town, don't come back.
Chemical company that contracted with Norfolk Southern to haul their vinyl chloride showed up on February 4th to monitor the situation. They found and told them that the cars that Norfolk Southern and its contractors were wanting to burn to prevent possible explosion were already cooling and posed no further threat. The EPA would like you to believe that a lone local fire chief made the call to burn the derailed cars. They have repeatedly claimed that they were not involved in that decision. But why? Why wouldn't they be the lead in such a hazardous situation? Why would they rely on the very ones who stood to profit or minimize their liability? I asked the fire chief about this narrative, that he alone made this decision.
When I talked to the EPA, and I kind of poked them a little bit, I'm like, hey, who said light this up, like light it on fire? And they told me that
that I did, of course.
Yeah. Is that true or not?
No.
I don't think it's so.
That decision was discussed by the entire Unified Command, everybody in the room, all the stakeholders.
Now, who is Unified Command?
The US EPA, the Ohio EPA, the railroad, Governor DeWine, myself, the EMA, all of the stakeholders and that had to,
The railroad.
All the people that showed up.
everybody. Ultimately, I have to give the final yes or no because I'm the incident commander, but it was agreed upon by everybody.
So everybody said yes, and the EPA included. Okay.
So what happens when you light things on fire, especially chemicals? I asked a toxicologist specifically about the chemicals found in the train the night that it derailed.
In the fire in East Palestine, Ohio, it's incomplete combustion, which means it doesn't all get consumed. And that's what you see in the large plumes that are going up into the air, are the literally thousands of pounds of material that are not burned, but they're going up as particulate that can be inhaled and cause health problems. Vinyl chloride is a single chemical, and there were like 220,000 pounds of it in each of 5 cars, so close to 1 million pounds. And when it's burned, when it's incompletely burned, it changes to at least 7 other chemicals. And these chemicals range from hydrochloric acid is one example, dioxins is another. But these chemicals have very serious short-term and long-term health effects. The hydrochloric acid is corrosive. It can burn your eyes and skin and lungs as you inhale it. There are several of the products from vinyl chloride that can cause cancer, long-term health effects in the liver, kidney, brain, etc.
Do you mind if I do a little film in here, brother?
Yeah, I don't mind.
You okay? Good. Like, yeah, I don't mind.
I don't like seeing myself on the camera.
Oh, don't worry about it. This will be on a big screen soon. Don't worry about it.
Oh, no, say that. Never had a problem. All of a sudden, I didn't even know about it until my wife saw it. She just happened to walk in the bathroom one day and she said, "What is this on your back?" I have no clue. I can't see it. Well, I went to the doctor and he looked at it and he said, "We got to burn that out. We got to cut that out." And he's going to cut it out and send it away and find out if it's, malignant or not.
But you've never had it before?
Never. No, never. Put the dog up so he doesn't eat up these nice people.
Joe and his wife have been ill, and we know things are in their water. I took their soil samples the other day. So instead of taking a biopsy of their lungs or anybody else feeling ill, the next best thing is a furnace filter to see what they've been exposed to so they can go to a toxicologist, medical doctor. And this is a furnace filter, and there's been no one else doing any furnace filter testing.
Right after the plume of chemicals settled in and blanketed our property, which was the same evening that they blew up those tankers, okay? We were driving home and we saw the plume. We saw like a fog all the way around our house, and we couldn't even roll the windows down the car to breathe because it would choke us half to death. And so I told her, we can't stay here. We got to leave. And so we left, and we stayed away for about 2 weeks and eventually another 4 weeks. When we came back, we said, we can't really trust the water here. We need to have the water tested. So we talked to Norfolk Southern. They said, go get your test done and we'll pay for it if you go get the test done. We did, but the testing site was not capable of doing a really good test of any possible metabolite that's a result of that controlled burn or that detonation of their chemicals. So Norfolk Southern said, we've got people that we can have test your water. I said, okay, I'm good with that. So they sent somebody over to test it. They tested it once. It showed vinyl chloride in the water. They came back again. They tested it a second time. Still there was vinyl chloride in it. We were both having a problem. It's not safe. We shouldn't be drinking it, which we weren't going to drink it anyway, but we probably shouldn't be washing our dishes or clothes or bathing in it. And they said, oh, it's okay. It's fine. You're fine. And so then they sent somebody from Michigan down to talk to us, and literally sent somebody all the way from Michigan just to talk to my wife and I. And she looked at all our results. She had them in front of her. She said, Mrs. Shealy, she said, I looked at your water. It's not that bad. I wouldn't drink it. I said, well, let me ask you a question. If we were your parents, would you tell your parents, if we were your parents, would you tell them it's okay to drink this water, to bathe in it, to cook with it, to do everything else? And she looked at me with a troubled look on her face and she said, buy bottled water. Do not drink the water.
And you're going to see me swabbing this twice. One swab is for SVOCs, and the other swab will be sent to lab for dioxins. This is an official protocol to sample what's on the surface. Needless to say, the EPA and Mark Durr are on tape saying all my data is useless on this, and they're pushing back very hard. And we know why. I am looking forward to the EPA because they're tracking people around town. They're looking at Facebook, and the railroad is hiring people to do it. And the EPA is going around, well, you smoked cigarettes in college. Well, you drank too much. It's your lifestyle. So I want to see them come after a pastor and blame your lifestyle. Good luck to them. Good luck to them.
So it might sound like the guy in the blue shirt has been to a few too many chemical disaster areas, that the fumes may have gotten to him.
He's been on the ground at every single major contamination, spill, explosion, accident.
Port of Stockton, California, Laurel, Montana, Santa Monica, California, and Eden, North Carolina, Aruba, Guanas Canal, Charleston, West Virginia.
Just as he's been a fount of knowledge for Select, he's a fount of knowledge for a senator.
The EPA and the railroad following people, monitoring their social media. The Government Accountability Project obtained emails from the EPA that make it not seem so crazy. Why are over 52 EPA agents being copied on the whereabouts of Scott Smith's location and his actions? Why is a woman named Barbara McCree, who, besides having an EPA.gov email address, is basically a ghost, asking for Scott's personal address and information? Why the obsession from a major government agency on a civilian collecting soil and air samples for residents who are being denied help? Why do they need to know his address? Why do they need to know where he's at all times when he's in East Palestine? Why are they following him?
Asking you if you're taking samples.
Have you taken samples?
I can't answer any of your questions.
You can't. Well, then why should I answer any of your questions?
We need to know who's coming and going on the site.
But this is private property.
I'm here.
You're standing on private property right now.
Everything that I've read in the newspapers and everything I've seen with the health effects of these residents, this is not something that was nothing to see here type event. Scott came in and he countered that narrative that the EPA and Norfolk Southern has been putting forth for so long, that the chemicals of concern are all within acceptable limits, that it's safe to live in the environment, it's safe to go back home. And this is not what residents are experiencing, and this is not what Scott has found out through his results.
Scott is doing testing that people can't get otherwise, and the EPA can judge his results and they can judge his methods, and it's the only way you get to any kind of transparency. Whether people agree with what he's doing or not, you need to have things to move the needle on what matters to the people in East Palestine.
I have Michael Regan here in my home, the head of the US EPA. After I brought that to light, that the EPA agent wasn't honest about the testing, well, he acknowledged the chemical gas smell recorded.
Okay.
Sherrod Brown and Bill Johnson, the senator and congressman, they acknowledged the chemical gas smell in my home too.
Did they test the filter the way Scott did?
No.
Nobody
I
did.
didn't even know you could test until Scott did.
Some said like fingernail polish remover with sweet added to it. To me, it was just a straight up burning. And when I say burning, when I came back into town to work, I would lose my voice an hour and a half into my shift. My balance would be off. I would stumble like I was drunk.
And tell us again where you were working. How close were you to the derailment?
I worked at Circle K.
Which is where?
Right on the main street of town. I was in between the railroad tracks and the creek.
Please pass on. We are here in good faith. I'm on the record in the media inviting the EPA and the railroad, specifically Will Burgess, that signed the lease, to join me anytime for the benefit of the community to take samples. We would love anybody to join us.
The bigger picture is we want to expose what we've seen as a pattern of regulatory capture of the EPA in these disasters, of the responsible party, and the responsible party hiring its own contractors to do its work, and then always coming up with non-detects or detections within, safe limits. It's just not an accurate reading based on the health symptoms and what Scott Smith is finding in his own testing.
All the time we see this. Track removals begun. Lovely, isn't it? They had these aerators placed in front of the tunnel, like right in front of my neighbor's house. I thought these aerators were doing good. Didn't realize that they were gassing everyone more.
How so?
They were lifting the chemical up from the creek and putting it into the air. So it was filling up my neighborhood with that smell. And after that, an EPA officer and had told me, EPA agent, I guess, had explained to me that those aerators should have never been placed in a residential neighborhood.
This woman is still displaced. Actually, her kids has to stay with her mother because she's staying in a hotel. This is what it came to, is we are dying. We need our kids saved. You'll see on the right-hand side, you'll see the million gallon tanks of contaminated water they have stored. And that's right here. This is all ground zero. That's all contaminated water.
I feel so sorry for these people. I can't stand to see these kids on the street. It's horrible.
It looks normal.
This community was awesome. That's why I moved here. I got 47 family members in the 1 mile zone that they're considering 1 mile zone. I live next to my best friend since we've been in diapers. It was awesome. I love this place.
But like what I'm saying is I don't understand like what you're worried about because everything's green. It looks beautiful. What's the problem?
Okay. I have a problem with my soil samples coming back positive for formaldehyde. I had my surface testing done. There was a chemical that came back, hexochlorine benzene, that was banned in 1966. Everything that what is different from here and different than Maui, in my opinion, is that you could see the permanent damage. You could see the deaths. What are we going to have in 5, 10, 15 years that is beautiful here? Who wouldn't want to live here? Quiet. Everybody gets a lot, you know.
But like like I said, it's beautiful. What made you even want to think about getting your soil sampled?
Because I knew something was wrong when my fiance was getting sores and blisters all over her bodies. When we had burning eyes, headaches, sore throats. I found 2 nodules on my tongue, or on my lungs. My liver enzymes went sky high. I tested positive first time for the metabolite for vinyl chloride. Then I started going to the creeks helping to film. And so I went and got another blood and urine test. It came back with the metabolite for vinyl chloride and benzene. The test results that came back from our creek so happens to have benzene in it. Everything that they're saying is not true.
What does it mean to have this guy here doing this for you?
Listen, this man I'm going to call him a savior for this community, because we cannot get any testing done besides this man. Universities just came in and did a little bit of testing, but we still ain't even got the results back from the universities yet.
You're getting his back, but you're not getting the universities?
Yes, we're not getting the universities back.
This is a hexane solvent, so anything that's on there will be coming right off. I'm even doing the back of it, even though I don't have to.
Well, the thing is the EPA's not testing.
And the thing is they accuse me of doing everything that they probably are doing. And you heard today a soil sample from 4 feet down.
The EPA refuses to test our soil or our air in our homes. Refuses. We are not, and he'll say it right to your face, we are not testing your soil or your error.
I always hand the resident this, so everything is documented, and you'll see me filling out a chain of custody tomorrow where I reference the timestamp and the geotag and where I am. And right now I'm taking a soil sample. See how I'm taking it? Is the dust particles settled? They're not going to go much below a quarter, half inch. So if I want to game the system and get a false non-detect, I'm going to core 4 feet down.
So you send this to the same place that the EPA gets theirs, or it's an EPA?
Well,
approved?
yeah, the Eurofins, the EPA approved lab, and the EPA, that's a great question. When I've repeatedly invited the EPA publicly to test side by side and media asked them questions, the EPA said there's no need to test side by side with Scott Smith because he's using an EPA certified lab, and we believe the lab results. What they question is my methodology, meaning why I'm sampling, where I'm sampling. And as you can see from the press release with the Government Accountability Project last week, I said, my work plan is simple. EPA refuses to test for a resident. Resident is reporting health symptoms. They call me, I test their property. That's my work plan. That's my methodology.
I can smell that.
You can smell the soil.
I can smell the soil.
Yeah, I can smell it too.
Wow.
This sounds like a really weird question, but do you get a weird taste in your mouth when you get over here?
Oh, it's a metally metallic.
Yeah, I'm tasting it. I'm tasting that, and I'm thinking I'm getting paranoid, but...
The back of my nose, my throat's on fire right now.
Now, why do you test for SVOCs versus VOCs for these?
Well, VOCs are the volatile organic compounds.
Uh-huh.
And those dissipate, they're already going to be in the air. So the key is the surfaces.
Okay.
It's like the air you breathe, going into the atmosphere. And at a murder scene, I'm basically testing for the blood that is sticking to the wall. This is like a murder scene.
Tell me about the chemical pneumonia that you were experiencing in your nosebleeds recently.
Yeah, I've been in the creek, which is why I say the third event is excavation could be worse than the first two, where I went back and I had chemical pneumonia. And then I came back the following week and did a lot of soil sampling and had nosebleeds that couldn't be stopped.
Scott Smith, he might not be an engineer, but he does have degrees from Baylor and Harvard, and he does have like 25 patents. He's the only guy smart enough to be out there testing the topsoil and looking in people's furnace. This environmental Avenger thing doesn't work out. He's always got a career in HVAC.
The EPA might question Scott's methods, but I have questions about theirs. Like, why were air monitoring systems set up during the burn, grouped and placed in large part upwind from the plume? Why do they continuously deny that they were, in fact, involved in the decision to light the fire, after being presented with evidence that the tanks were cooling and at no risk of explosion? It's hard to believe anything that Unified Command says, while they hold the hands of the railroad and seem to be intentionally and strategically determined to produce non-detects.
Why don't we deserve to be protected? Why don't we deserve to know what's in our food? Why don't we deserve to know scientifically through data, through health risk assessment, exactly what people are exposed to daily? Why? This is not the end, it's only the beginning. You will start telling the truth.
You saw Dr. Rick Chai last night at the town hall and all that with the reporter Rich McHugh from News Nation. Those are water samples from all that.
What's the difference between the top shelf and the bottom shelf?
Top shelf are furnace filtered, and the middle shelf are soil samples, and the bottom is water.
So when you get those samples back, do you report them to the resident?
Yep, I go right to the residents.
Okay.
To put this into context, a lot of these samplers that they take all these samples in teams of 4 to 6 people, and I'm just one person. And the whole process is I methodically set up the chain of custody, refrigerate everything, methodically set this up. Sometimes it's take 2 to 3 hours to write this up properly, go to FedEx.
You don't charge these people anything for this, do you?
No.
How much have you spent so far in?
Close to $100,000.
In testing?
Close to $100,000. And I had commitments from people to help with no conditions, and they all reneged on me. Lawyers have now reached out to test properly, so I've told the lawyers I'm not in the business of enriching lawyers. The community I do for free. So I'm just hoping to recover my out-of-pocket costs because I came here for 2 trips
as you heard me tell the story, Ken Beresford, who was on the second trip, said, you got to come back, and he passed away recently, and he said, you got to come back, and you've given me hope for humanity. And I said the same thing to him. So I'm in all the way now. And so if people around me make promises and renege and don't want to step up and help, I have no choice but to move forward. I'll figure it out.
So what happens now? Historically speaking, attorneys swoop in and sign up residents into some large class action lawsuit. They then reach a settlement, of which the attorneys take a gigantic portion of. The offender carries on with unchecked business as usual, while the citizens are left with crumbs and lingering questions about their health and their future. East Palestine and its residents have a chance to be different. They are engaged in ways that give me hope. They are recording and documenting interactions on their phones and showing up to meetings to hold politicians and agencies accountable. Dr. Rick Chai, the chiropractor who wrote prescriptions for blood work when residents were denied by their healthcare providers, and the same guy who still walks the creeks exposing lingering contamination, is now running for Congress. They have allies in their fight to bring meaningful change. They have the information, the technology, the community of their friends and family. And they also have the guy in the blue shirt.
That is so good. I liked it even more the second time. And what a way to end it. I got the hugest goosebumps when you're like, guy in the blue shirt. I'm like, ah! It's so awesome. I mean, you must have had a horribly tough job trying to decide what to put in the documentary and what not to put in, because this could literally have been a 15-hour documentary easily.
I have to give some shout out because the characters, I shouldn't call them characters, just people, but they are characters in their own right. Made it so easy to edit, because you have not just Scott Smith, who is amazing. I call him, he's an American hero. I don't care what anybody says. That dude, listen, as my grandfather used to say, and I say it a lot, when somebody don't have a dog in that hunt, right? So basically just means I got nothing in this thing, right? I mean, I don't belong here. I don't have a dog in it, right? None of my business. But you're talking about a guy who is so selfless that not only has he put up his own money, right? And there's a side thing that I have about attorneys that I'll mention in a minute. But you're putting, and I think that number is over 120,000 now that he's got in that thing. And to go out and do that, wanting nothing. I didn't know the guy before. Matter of fact, I looked at him like the second or third day that I was there, and I just go, bro, don't you own a different shirt? Because I thought he was just wearing the same damn shirt over every day. And he said, no, I'm the guy in the blue shirt. It's my thing. And I went, oh yeah. And I was like, you know what? It sure is. Like that dude, there's things we don't talk about. We mentioned just a little bit with health issues and things like that. You're talking about a guy who, when I say he's an American hero, he's somebody that we should be proud of, because he's putting his own health at risk. He's putting his own finances up. He's putting his money where his mouth is. And then you get these pieces of shit attorneys who want basically to have his information for free. And I say that these attorneys, and like in the end, when I say in the film, I'm no fan of attorneys anyway, but in the end, when I say that these attorneys swoop in, they sign everybody up to these class action lawsuits, and then these attorneys take 40%. They're taking 40% while they're leaving this other stuff, right? So my thought is, if you don't have if you don't have $150,000 or $120,000 to throw at Scott Smith, we're doing all this research and giving you all this stuff, Like you have no business being on a case that's millions and millions and millions of dollars, period. And so if I were choosing attorneys to represent me, that's one thing I'd be looking at. Hey, are you taking care of these guys? Because if you're not taking care of that guy, you're sure as shit not going to take care of me. That's that's my 2 cents. That's what it's there for. The characters, I know Jake's on this call. I love that fucking dude, man. He has
Jake's
so
here.
yeah, he is.
Hi, Jake.
He has so much footage that it's just incredible what he has, and he's preserving the story so that when people like me can get a hold of it eventually, whether it's me or someone else can get a hold of it and use it to continually tell a story. Chrissy Hilton, the same way. You, the same way. And you're starting to do it. And then, but I think what's interesting is that you have some people who are legitimately scared, still scared, right? And then I think you have people who are just so fed up with the bullshit that they're just like, what else are you going to take from me, right? What else are you going to do to me, right? And I think, I'm not going to speak for them, but I think that's when you get people like Jake and Chrissy who are in those places. It's like, what else do you think you're going to do? You know, you're taking my health, you're taking my finances, you're taking everything away from me. And those are dangerous people, and I love that. And so I had some people watch the film prior to, because I bounce things off a lot of people. I'm like, hey, so long before you guys ever see it, I've seen this damn thing like 150 times. So I bounce it off of people all the time. I'm like, hey, make sure that this is making sense, because sometimes when you're editing in the process of it,
right,
then you think, oh, in your head, you're like, oh, well, I understand what this means, you know. So,
right.
And somebody said to me, one of my really good friends, he just goes, I don't know that I'd call the guy a jackass. And I go, nah, he's a jackass. And then later he saw it again and he goes, yeah, that dude's a jackass. And so, but I think I love the tenacity of what's going on there with some of those guys. And when you're listening to Jake and Chrissy and you're listening to Pastor Sheely talk, you believe every word they say. There's no, you know, what are these guys into? The same thing. And when you see, I was crying when I was editing this thing the night before I was finishing it up, and I was like, okay, how am I going to write that for? And then it just, all the stories just came together to me in the end. And I'm just standing up I'm just in here in the studio by myself, and I'm clapping, just going, yeah, I got it right. I got it right. So I feel like I got it right. And the people that there seem to love it. So that's what really matters to me the most.
Absolutely. Yeah, Chrissy, I don't know what it is, but every time I see her, whether in person or whether she's on my show or if we're talking on the phone, I just automatically start bawling. I don't know what it is, but I just love her so freaking much.
Listen, man, that lady is not a lady I'd ever want to see mad, because when she gets to
crying,
it is not tears of sadness. She is like,
I know.
Ooh, man. And
she said something like, we were sitting in the theater, and I think it was during Leslie's thing, and she looked at me and she goes, we're going to get those motherfuckers. And I was like, oh, Jesus is listening.
Well, I'll tell you something. You've got the team around you to do it right now, between the people. And then you've got people like Tom Devine, who is, man, that dude, listen, that dude, when you talk about, there's a whistleblower that he knew, because I fanboyed on him a little bit.
I did too.
There was a woman named Maud DeVictor, who was the one, she was a black nurse, and she was the one who blew the whistle on the VA for the way that they were treating these veterans during the Agent Orange stuff. And then he knew her and worked with her. He didn't represent her, but they were just friends. And he was like, you know, getting all this stuff with her. And then you go to that, and now what he's doing with these guys. And Leslie Pacey, that lady is gangster. Now, I'm not even kidding you. That lady is, like, she is just, she doesn't know when to quit, and she doesn't know when. I make myself, like Papa Hemingway said, I leave a little in the tank for tomorrow. And I don't know if she just doesn't have to refill that tank as much, but she is a machine and just goes and goes and goes. And then you've got people like Scott, who, I shouldn't say, hold on, let me back that up. You have Scott, because you don't have people like Scott. That guy is one of, when you say one of a kind, I don't know how, there's not words that I can really put into, that I can express what that guy has done for people that I had no idea who the guy was when I went there. No idea, right? I didn't know that Mark Ruffalo calls him the Toxic Avenger. I didn't know that all these guys, you know, and I could go on and on. But he doesn't do it for any of that. He never mentioned any of that to me before I got there. It was a couple of days later afterwards that I was just kind of like, oh, wait, who is this guy? And I started putting it together. Just somebody who just truly wants to do the thing that helps people and that takes care of people who can't fight for themselves or who don't know how to fight for themselves.
Right.
And I love that dude. He has become a very close friend of mine. And like I said, we got to protect that dude at all costs. But that team that's there, that's assembling around East Palestine, and I'll tell you something to those guys that are there, is you can't give up. You can't give up on that thing, because eventually you're going to be tired of talking about it. You're going to be tired of just constant. I interviewed a girl for a lady for the Vietnam film who was a child of a Vietnam veteran. And she was like, you know what? I'm done. I've done this for so long. I'm finished. This is all I'm doing. I shot her last interview of the whole thing. And you could tell that she was so polished because she had done it so long and so much. But this fight goes on, and then this fight spills over into other places too, you know? So, I truly have hope, that they can make a difference. And but I want them all out of there. I'm telling everybody to move. I'm like, just get out of there. But you know, I don't know where to tell you to go. You know, I tell all them, move down here to Florida with me and do whatever, you know. So.
We need to buy an island. That's what I told Jamie. I was like, if I ever win the lottery, I don't play it. But let's say I played it and I won. Yeah. I would buy a private island. I would move everyone in like EP and Darlington and everything. And we would just like build a mansion and just have like a nonstop party, because that's what they deserve at this point. But it's like, where do they get the means to move? That's where it comes down to. And it breaks your heart, because you're like, some of them don't want to move, understandably, because there's so many memories there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's,
and you'll have people, I've noticed people that are there who who just basically want everybody to shut up and go away, because whether they're protecting a way of life that they feel like that they have, or whether they are looking at preserving property values, which is a thing to remember.
Right.
So, but we're putting this health stuff on the back burner, right? And so the thing about toxicity is sometimes it doesn't even get you till late. It's like what you said earlier, and like Jake said in the film, what are you going to be doing? What are we going to be talking about in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years now? So the attorneys come in, they sign everybody up, they get with Norfolk Southern, they come up with this amount of this magic number, they spread that money out, and so, okay, so let's say that number is $50,000 a person. It's not going to be. It's not even going to be close. And that's just, this is me being a negative Nancy, and I don't mean to be. I'm just looking historically at what happens, right? So then what? Is all the pain and the sickness and the suffering and the loss that those people are going through, is it worth $50,000 to you? Because it wouldn't be to me. So, so I think it's incredible what they're doing. I think the tenacity of that kind of that they have of, if we're going to stay, or at least it's that mentality that you might whip my ass, but you're coming down with me, and I love that about them. So
I think that one of the things I have to I think I'm talking to myself sometimes too when I tell them, but one of the things I tell the residents so often is it's okay to take a self-help break, though. If you need a few days to just sleep and breathe deep and chill, it's okay. And then get out and kick ass more. unfortunately, it's like, there's few of us outside of the community who are really helping to this extent,
Yeah.
and it sucks that so much of it is them depending on each other because they're hurting. They shouldn't have to, whether it's a feeling of obligation or what have you, they shouldn't have to also be burdened with trying to help others in the community while they're also grieving. I call it grieving. It's like the 5 stages, the denial, the acceptance, the bargaining, things like that. It's
Right.
heartbreaking.
I want to see them do. I was visiting with a mother and daughter that came to lunch with Scott and Leslie and I before I left, and I said, "You guys ought to do a casket parade." And they're like, "What is that?" And I was like, "I just made it up in my head." But when the Vietnam veterans, there was a guy that I filmed for that, who's a dear guy, and his name's Fred Wilcox, and he wrote a book called "Waiting for an Army to Die," which is the same fucking playbook that they're using right now. Right? It's the same thing. Waiting, so they're basically going to wait you out until you either get tired of it, till you die, till you leave, till you just don't even want to talk about it anymore, right? They're just going to wait you out. And the guy they took and they spray painted a casket orange, and they filled it up with copies of his book, and then took it up and dropped it off on the steps of the White House. And I would love to see the people of East Palestine do a if they told them they couldn't carry it up or get a parade permit to carry it down the street, they ought to just put them up in their yard like people do,
Yeah.
and make art and stuff like that. But it's I want to see them stay active in this stuff and hold these politicians accountable. I want to see them. There's a couple of things. I want to see them canvass neighborhoods for Dr. Rick Chai. I am neither Republican nor Democrat, either one. And I really mean that when I say that. But that man is one of your own that's there going to fight, and he's real good and pissed off. That dude is another guy who, why would you ever want to run for office? Like, there's no upside of it, right? You have to be in a position to where, because the guy, I don't know him, but the guy don't need the money. You know what I mean? He's not going up there for ego or anything like that. He doesn't strike me as that guy, but he's good and pissed off. And you can tell by his channel when he's walking those creeks and he sees what's happening and the lies that are being done. Man, that guy needs to be, they need to be canvassing neighborhoods as much as they can for that guy. And, I'm a little bit of an asshole sometimes. I know you probably don't get that from me, but the other thing that I would do is when people start getting divided, and right now you've got a lot of people being divided, and attorneys are real good at doing that, saying, "Oh, come with us. We're going to do that. Oh, we care about you. We care about you. We're thinking about you. Stay strong, blah, blah, bullshit, right? I really will stick to the thing again and say, if I were the people of East Palestine, I would be saying, whoever's taking care of Scott Smith is who we're going to be is who we're going to go with, right? Because these attorneys are going to make millions of dollars, right? No matter what the number is, because they're going to make a lot of change, right? And the fact that you can't take care of the person who has been on the ground since day one, making sure that these guys are being taken care of, making sure that their tests are being done, and who has not asked them for a single dime, right? If I lived there, that's what I would do. I would orchestrate that and just say, whoever takes care of Scott Smith is who we're all going with. Because there is stuff that you can do like that. I'm just talking out my ass a little bit, but honestly,
no, but that makes total sense.
Because if they're not going to take care of him, they're not going to take care of you.
You're paying them essentially for their service. They need 40%. To listen to you. It's that simple.
Because we're not talking about 10%.
Right?
You're not talking about these guys who come in and go, hey, you know what? This amount of money is good for me. I was in a car wreck and the attorneys took 40%, right? 40%. I'm like, you weren't the one going to the chiropractor and having the injections put in your neck and your back. You weren't the one. And so it's the same thing, even though you may not see it right now. It's the same thing. There's all this stuff that's happened to them and all these issues that are going to keep coming up. They are going to come up because I don't believe that they've got that thing cleaned up. I think that no way. And the fact that they tore up that track and laid it right back down so they could keep going is just wow to me. Wow.
You know, I was just thinking of something. I digress, but about a year ago, I went to Washington, D.C. with some other activists, and we were doing actions for healthcare, for like Medicare for all, universal healthcare, whatever you call it, and which is exactly what I'm fighting for East Palestine. And we decided to march around the Capitol. Well, not just march, but walk around the Capitol in all black and with like gray face makeup and with tombstones on our front and back. We took poster board and made cut tombstones and then tied them with string. And it said, you know, RIP died of no insulin, RIP died because no insurance, and things like that. They could totally do that too. Like, we just silently walked around the Capitol for a few hours and it got attention and it got people talking. And
I think that when I talk about Dr. Chai, let's talk about him again for a second. When I say that I am neither Republican or Democrat, I don't think that people should be worried about whether that man is a Republican or a Democrat. And let me tell you why. President Obama, whom I affectionately referred to as President Monsanto, gave the chemical companies everything they could ever have fucking wanted in their lives, right? Nixon is just an absolute joke. And then, we start talking about chemicals. President Trump lets them, use glyphosate at an incredible amount of, things like that. So whether it's bad science that they're getting and they're not really being told the truth, which has happened, right? It happened to Kennedy when they were wanting to spray that there in Vietnam. And he read Rachel Carlson's Silent Spring and was like, should we really be spraying this stuff? And they were like, yeah, it's great. And then he starts figuring out, he's like, no, this isn't. And then all of a sudden we know how that book ended. But you look at these politicians who either are being given bad science, bad information, which is entirely possible, right? So I'm not, before somebody checks out and turns off the thing and says, oh, he doesn't like Trump or he doesn't like Biden or he doesn't like it. Not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that they're either in on it together and they're backing the EPA and covering the lines and they're taking the money from the chemical companies and the railroad companies and they're rolling on with life as general. They don't really give a shit about any of you, right? One of the two. Or they're getting bad science. It's one of those two things that's happening, right? But when you have somebody like Dr. Chai, who I listened to him try to, when he was giving a talk at the film, when we showed it, we screened it in the presentation there, he said, if you're a Democrat, I want you to really, consider me, not just, I think you have to pick one or the other, right? But I think that guy truly gives a damn about that community and truly cares that you have it. So it's not a Republican versus Democrat or how we should vote or how we should this and that, or we want to toe these party lines. But when you sit back and you look, both of those parties have done nothing. Neither of those parties have done anything to put a stop to this. So I don't care what someone's running as. I want to know what their thoughts are on the poisoning of this country, because it's insane what's happening. We say, they say we're having a chemical accident every other day in this country. That's absurd that we're still dealing with that. We're talking about climate change, but we're not talking about what's happening to our land. We're not talking about what's going on here. And it's, so, I mean, I could rant on that all day long, but.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that, those who I've spoken with in the community, they're just so ecstatic Rick is running that I really don't think they care about party either. I think what is, supersedes everything else is that they know he's been busting his ass and continues to bust his ass
Yeah.
for them. And
I wish that they would, and there probably are some, and I know that people are saying, yeah, it's easy, Hank, you're in Florida and you're, whatever. But to take a day and just take flyers and go knock on doors and be like, hey, I'm an East Palestine resident. Here is Dr. Chai. No matter what you think of what's happening over there, this is how hard this guy is working for us. Here's my flyer. I just want to tell you that he's in those creeks. He's doing all these things. If he'll fight this hard for us, he'll fight this hard for you, right? Because I really do think there's a grassroots movement that can happen, and I think that they can be a part of that kind of thing. So
I do too.
God bless those people like Jake, who I worry about, that gets down in those creeks with him. Dr. Chai, who gets in those things. Chrissy, who still comes back and and does things. I asked her to go back and film some stuff for me. And then you got people like Scott, or not people like Scott. You just got Scott. You just got Scott, man. And that dude is simply incredible. And it's time to unify, and it's time to make sure that we're all on the same page. And if you're not taking care of, the minute that they're divided, it's all over with. The absolute second that they're divided, it's over with. And I don't care if that's the councils and the groups and the movements and stuff like that. The minute that there's division, you can count it out, because that's what they're counting on, is that. So it's important to stay unified, and it's important to make sure that we rally around and that we protect those people who have an avenue to really help us and be a voice. And people like Dr. Chai, people like Scott, people like Leslie Pacey, Tom Devine are, we're lucky to have them.
Absolutely. Well, where can people see? Do you have this film on a website or something that they can share it as well?
Right now, it is on YouTube under the Lost LOST Pirate Pictures YouTube page, and it will be there for a little bit, probably another week or so, because once we enter it into film festivals, which is another way just to get more attention, more eyeballs on the film, I'll pull it down, because film festivals don't like that you can go to YouTube and see something, right? So I put it out there as a screener for people who couldn't see it. And so it'll pull it down, and it'll be gone for probably, a few months or so, and while it goes into festivals. And then we'll hope. It's a little bit long, because it's somewhere a good 10 or 11 minutes is about as good for a short. But I had real problems, real trouble trying to tell that story in less than 10 minutes, because I just don't feel like I could have done it. And so even if it just gets into one festival, that's fine, whatever. I don't care if it doesn't get into any. I think it's a film that I'm very proud of, and that I will screen privately in a lot of places, or publicly in a lot of places, but for different groups, not in film festivals. And I hope people will share it, and I hope people will continue to share their story and continue to document, because even if it's not me, it's going to be incredible to have that footage that people are taking and holding on to. One of the siren and the fire footage, I found that on TikTok, and I reached out to the lady and I said, hey, can I use this? And she goes, absolutely. So just
Awesome.
Check it out there, and then it'll be gone for a little bit, and then it'll be back.
And what is the other documentary you said that you are working on?
So I'm working on one called Secondhand Orange, which is it's a film about the side effects of Agent Orange on the children and grandchildren of Vietnam veterans. And it takes me from that story to Times Beach, and then I don't know how it wraps up in the end, but then to East Palestine. And what it really shows is these people don't give a shit about you, right? They don't care. they refuse right now to really take care of these Vietnam veterans, right? A lot of them are already dead and got nothing, right? Their kids are sick. They don't want to do anything. And so if you're waiting for the government to come help you or save you, they don't give a shit about the people who fought for this country, much less people who are just, being abused by these chemical companies and these, you know what? I'll have to back up there. From everything that I've read and everything that I've seen, the chemical company, and it was hard for me to give them a pass because I am not a chemical company fan. But it seemed like they were the only ones of all the people that should have been who showed up and said, we don't need to do this, right? They were the only ones who just actually used the science and said, we don't think we need to. There was somebody was talking about one of the contractors when they testified said, yeah, I could tell that the tanker was about to explode because I walked up and touched my hand to the back of it. Wait, it was about to explode and it was so hot, but you touched it with the back of your hand? Like, come on, bro. And then, but you get these chemical companies who show up and say, it's cooling down. It's going to be okay. Right. But yet they still go ahead and they still do it. They still go ahead and they still light this thing up. And now they've spent God knows what, I will say this, in my opinion, even if it costs them a stupid amount of money, that it's not going to be, it's not going to be near as much as it would have cost them if they would have kept those tracks closed and kept those trains. There was a scene that I cut out when Jake is giving us the tour and you see me, I'm leaned out the window and I'm filming, right? I said, hey, let me out. And because you see these guys that were just sitting on the streets and they're in these orange suits and it looked like a zombie apocalypse is what it looked like. It was the weirdest thing. And I'm interviewing this one guy and I ask him, how long have you been there? And he goes, oh, it's my second day. This guy's in his 70s. I'm like, your second day? I said, are they telling you what are they doing back there? And, I'll play a dumb hillbilly really well. And he said, well, they're digging that up and they're, putting that stuff down there. And I said, are they telling you what's in it? No. And he said, I said, are they telling you that it's safe to breathe? He goes, yeah. And I said, well, that's a bunch of bullshit. I said, go get you a respirator, brother. I said, if you're going to be sitting out here, go do that. And he goes, all right. He goes, there's a lot of lies going on. And I said, and we just kind of, left it at that. And we knew, he knew what I meant and I knew what he meant. And then I walked down the road and there was another worker and I asked her how long she'd been there. And she's told me, well, as I'm talking to her, this train is just like roaring by. It's so loud. I mean, it's like in the video footage, and then I make a comment. I go, that is so loud. There's a train track somewhere about a little more than a quarter of a mile away from my house. And it comes through about 3 or 4 times a day, something like that. And I'm telling her this. She goes, oh, no, that's like every 20 minutes. I said, really? And she goes, oh, it's a bit. She goes, at least every 20 minutes, it seems like that there's another train come blowing through there. And so when you just look at how much money they're making and I don't know that there's a way to do it or to look at it, but every 20 minutes, man, every 20 minutes. And and you just look at that number, whatever that number is, for every 20 minutes that goes by, that's millions of dollars probably that they're losing.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
So
but hey, at least they're spending $25 million on a park.
Such trash, and they know that it's trash. There's some stuff that's going on that I've been talking with some of the other guys about shooting a feature on this thing, and we'll see how that works out. But there's so much trash that's going on there, and garbage that's being told to those people, and they're saying it with a smile, and they're saying it. I mean, I've got questions that I don't have answers to. I want to know why, and I'm sure there's probably reasonable answers, but for now, I'll go ahead and ask them. Why do we have somebody that's with is it the NSA? Like why are they involved? Right? It's like, wait, why are you even here? I was on a call the other day with Scott, and there's a guy who's sampling for the EPA, and he's being told that and and he was critical of Scott's work, which it's fine. We have that right to be critical of somebody's work, right? But I was sitting on there. I'm in the comments. I can't see any of the comments here, but I'm on the comments and I'm hammering them out. I'm just like, well, how come? And he's saying, well, we showed up, and they would say, well, you can't come in and sample right now. We're not ready for you. So another hour, then come back. Well, another hour, then come back. Well, come back in another hour. And then finally we get in, and he goes, and then they said, okay, you got 30 minutes, and then you have to be gone. Who the fuck are these people that are telling the EPA that you can't be here, you got 30 minutes? Now, here's the story. If I decide to go out on my ranch in Arkansas and I just want to start spilling and dumping waste, right? And then all of a sudden, as I'm trying to get rid of all this evidence, the EPA shows up at my gate, and I say, no, you can, a couple more hours, you can leave for a couple more hours. And then I'm able to tell them, no, you can come on in, but about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Oh, you can't sample here, but you can sample over there, right? There's no way they're letting me get away with that, right? So why are we I got to be careful what I say. Why are we snuggled up in bed with the EPA and Norfolk, the EPA with Norfolk Southern and these guys? It's like when Leslie Pacey says what she says in the film about regulatory capture. I put that on there because that's a really fancy lawyer way for saying these guys are circle jerking each other is really what it is.
Yeah.
And they're in there making sure that everybody's, that they're, so, yeah. So,
well, if you, I gotta send you the link to the entire conversation I recorded with Mark Durno, because in that I asked him who is higher on the hierarchy, EPA or Norfolk Southern, and he's like, we are. And I'm like, but why do you keep using the word negotiation? Why are you negotiating with them? Why?
Right.
If you are on top, why aren't you demanding something? Oh, you gotta listen to this conversation. It's just bananas.
I said the other day, there's this old joke. I can't remember who I told this to. I said, there's this old joke about it's just not meant to be anything. It's how many pancakes does it take to fill up a doghouse? 63, because chocolate ice cream don't have bubbles. And you're like, huh? But that's what it's like talking to them. It's like, they're never gonna answer the question, and it's gonna be something that's completely off of that. And so, I mean, I'm rambling now about stuff you guys already know, but making that film, I realized that I had a camera in that one at the beginning, and I don't remember why I took a camera with me, but apparently I did. That very first scene with Marilyn at that at the dining hall, I took, and I filmed that with one of my larger cameras, but then the rest of the film I shot with an iPhone, and Leslie's iPhone, and then Jake and Chrissy's iPhone, phone and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's just keep recording, guys. Keep recording all this stuff. Nice. And even when they say, no, are you recording? Be like, it's a public place. You're a public official. They threw Jake out of a church and said he couldn't film there because it was private property. No, it's not. If that property is being used for public service, for public thing, then that is public property and you can film there. Keep filming. Keep filming. Film everything. Film all your interactions with those people, because it's what you're going to have. And there's going to be that needle in the haystack. There's going to be that one film that, that one thing that hopefully continues to make a difference. So again, I kind of, the things I want them to do, I want them to do a casket parade, and I want them to all get together and say, whatever attorney takes care of Scott Smith is the one we're going with, because that guy is a treasure to those people right now. So, yeah.
Right on. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight, Hank. I'd love to have you back in the future just to give updates about, your other film or film festivals, or maybe outtakes or anything like that. But thank you so much for the amazing work you're doing and for joining tonight.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me. And if you guys want to check out my stuff, you can find me at Lost Pirate Pictures, and I've got Vietnam. I'm sorry. A couple of veterans issues films that are coming out that'll be out in the next couple of months because they're made their way through festivals and that kind of thing. So that's it. If you want to show me some support, just give me a like and a follow and subscribe on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff helps us. But Instagram, Facebook, whatever. So it's thank you guys so much for everything.
Thank you. And same to you guys for watching. Thank you so much. And especially the residents, I love you. And I will continue speaking up for you. Smash the like button, smash the subscribe, share, do all those fun things. And much love to everyone. Take care.
Bye.